Entry 624. Imperial Scouts have identified a prime example of a deployed and equipped Ork Kommando. The subject has been spotted utilizing advanced infiltration tactics, and so far Imperial scholars and strategy adepts have failed to decipher the intricacies of these techniques. Once the subject's acute senses catches wind of her prey, it is all but over.
We've got a bonus hobby video for you this month, brought to you by my patrons, because originally they had voted, you see, for me to paint up Mozgrog, because I thought he was going to be coming out this month. GW has disappointed me, and he has not shown up. However, I put another poll up on my Patreon, and they voted, and instead, I'm going to be painting two models for you this week. We're going to be painting not only a Commando, which is really fun, he was super awesome to paint, so I'm really looking forward to this, and we're also going to be painting up an explosive little Bomb Squig. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get them primed and start painting. As per usual, we need to start by getting both of our models primed up using a bit of Wraithbone. Now you can use whatever light-toned primer that you want, but I tend to gravitate towards Wraithbone because one, I'm going to be using a lot of warm color tones this time around, and it just works really well with contrast paint, which I will be using a lot of today. I want to work on my explosive little friend first because the Bomb Squig is super cute, and I'm gonna go with a classic design here. We're going to go with a red flesh tone on our Bomb Squig, and to start that, we're going to need a little bit of Wild Rider's red. I'm gonna put this down in 2 thin coats, and we're going to then let it dry thoroughly. After that, I want to go with a wash almost of Blood Angel's red contrast paint. So I'm gonna use 2 dollops of contrast medium mixed in with the paint to create a nice little wash to put over top of my squig to give him a lovely cherry red color tone, which is perfect because he's a little cherry bomb, and I think this is gonna work great. But honestly, the Blood Angels is looking a little bit dark. I want to pop some of those ridges on him, really make his face emphasize. So for that, we're going to apply 2 dry brushes real quick. The first one is going to be sort of a transitional dry brush that's going to help build up to the lighter tone we're working with, and that is going to be Trollslayer Orange. This works really well. I almost stopped here because I really like the sort of subtle look, but that face, that little Bomb Squig face, screams for a little bit more attention. So for that, I'm going to pull out a little bit of Yriel yellow. This is a super vibrant yellow color tone that I absolutely love, and it works perfectly with the combination of the Wild Rider's red, the Blood Angel's red, and then my orange. I'm really digging the way his flesh tone looks. He's a genuine cherry. Now let's get to some of those accessories he's running around with. Now that my squig is a proper bomb red, we can move on to some of the details. And we're gonna start with a little bit of Baslicanum gray on all of the metal bits on the model. This includes the antenna that's going to set him off when he explodes in the enemy lines later, as well as the armor plate on his belly and any of the little accessories that might have some metal bits on them. I'm also going to use this color tone on the Dynamite's, oh my gosh, I've forgotten what those things are called. Those strings that go into them to make them explode. Fuse, that's what they're called. It's called a fuse. We're going to paint the fuse up in a little bit of Baslicanum gray as well, and then after that, we're going to focus on the bombs in his hungry little mouth, because I want to make them look like they're from the box that we attached to my Ork terrain earlier that was stolen from the Imperial Guard. So I'm going to use a little bit of Militarum green on them to really make them seem like they came from that set. Then for the Dynamite, we're going to pull back out Blood Angel's red and just put this directly onto the Dynamite to make it super vibrant, very bold, and it works perfectly. There's not much left to do on the Bomb Squig himself, except for a couple of details, so let's go ahead and take care of those now, starting with some skeleton horde for those sharp little teeth and those adorable little toe claws, because they are just so gosh darn cute. I love this little figure so much. Once those are done, we're gonna move on to a little bit of Snakebite leather, because he's running with some Snakebite. We should have that color tone on him, and this works perfectly for all those straps carrying all the bombs and mines and all of that on him. Then Once that's taken care of, we're gonna move on to a little bit of Iyanden yellow, which I'm going to be using for his glowing little eyes. And I actually really like this because it complements and ties into the Yriel yellow that I put on his flesh tone. I really dig the vibe. Plus, I decided to put this color tone on the cord that is attaching to the detonator that I assume is going to make him explode once the commando hits the button. Now, I was looking at the teeth, and they actually ended up a little bit darker than I originally intended, so I'm gonna pull back out some Wraithbone and quickly edge highlight them just to make them stand out a bit more and brighten them up a little bit. Oh, hey, didn't see you guys there. Well, while you're here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video. For now, the Bomb Squig is done, so it's time to move on to the Commando, and we're gonna start with his flesh just in the same way that we did the Squig, except of course we're going to be going with something a little bit more orky. In fact, we're gonna go with my classic orc flesh color palette, which begins with a bit of Plaguebearer's flesh. This is a deep, rich yellow-green color tone that works as a foundation color for the shade that I'm going to be applying next, which is Bielton Green. This slightly cooler green color tone over top the Plaguebearer's flesh that we just put down creates a beautiful apple green color tone that I absolutely love, and I put it on as many of my orcs as I possibly can, and we're going to be doing it here, obviously. But it's not the only thing we're gonna do. We're gonna push this flesh tone a little bit further by pulling back out some Yriel yellow one more time. This is not only going to tie the orc into my squig, but it also will brighten up some of that flesh tone on him by doing a light dry brush using this yellow tone over just the most raised edges. This really emphasized some of the scars that he has on his face, and I absolutely love the way he's turning out so far. I mean, just look at him. His flesh tone is looking amazing, but we should probably take care of some of the other, articles of clothing and such that's on him to get him fully finished up and everything. So we're gonna move on now to the leathers, and I'm gonna start with a bit of Arggos Dune on his pants, as well as I'm going to apply this color a little bit to a couple of the straps on his jacket. This is just gonna give me a little bit of a different color tone because I'm actually gonna be using several different leathers. Once the Arggos Dune is done, we're then going to move on to Darkoath flesh, which is by far one of my favorite contrast brown color tones. I use it as often as I can. It has a very slight reddish hue once you layer it a couple times, which is exactly what I do here on his backpack, because I really want that color tone in there. And I really just want this backpack to be the only thing painted in this to make it stand out. Once that's done, we're then going to move on to all the straps that are on him. And much like we did with the Squig, I'm actually going to pull back out Snakebite leather. This is their, it's his clan, so he should probably have that color tone on him. Plus, it is super neutral, and the slight orange hue it takes next to the orc flesh, I absolutely love. So we're definitely going to be applying this to all the straps and accessories, filling in any of the last leather bits that we need to take care of.
Ambush! How's it going?
It's going well, actually. I'm doing a in-between cleanup stage right now on the Commando. I just wrapped up doing the majority of the leathers, but I need to clean up his jacket a little bit before I can finish up the cloth. So I'm doing that right now. Then we'll finish that up and basically move on to the metallics. I'm not gonna be using metallics. We're gonna be using contrast paint, but it's the metal pieces. And then it's just details after that. So I'm really happy with it. I love how his skin turned out. I'm really actually happy with how the leathers have shown up. You guys can actually take a quick peek there. So I'm really, really pleased with how that's looking. But yeah, I'm excited. Let's get back to cleaning this up and finish this model.
Now that I'm done with all the neutral leather tones, it's time to move on to playing with some color, which is always my favorite thing to do in these videos. But we're not going to be just playing with any color today. I'm going to go with some specific ones because I want it to tie in to what I've been doing on the rest of my orc army. Starting with some Militarum green. I'm gonna put this on his vest because I assume that he was like, I'm a commando, I should be sneaky. This will clearly camouflage me with my flesh tone. It's gonna work perfectly. Nothing is gonna go wrong here. And then for his hat, because I wanted it to look denim, I decided to go with ultramarine blue, which I've been using on my orcs already. This allowed me to add this color in very subtly because I really didn't want to have too much bright color tones on him because he is supposed to be sneaky. He is a commando after all, and I wanted to keep on theme a little bit with that. But I still wanted a splash of my Snakebite color tones, and this really allowed me to do it. Next, it's time to take care of all of the metal that he has on him, both his claw, his gun, any accessories that he's got on him, his belt. All of that is going to be coated in a bit of Baslicanum gray. And to help differentiate it and give a little bit of color variety, I'm going to be layering this a couple of times on various sections on both the gun and the claw, just to build up some extra color and change some variation, or basically change the color tone of the gray, which is one of the reasons I actually really like contrast paint and actually end up using it so much. Because it's so transparent, you can actually layer and get different depths out of your colors by just layering on the same color tone, rather than having to constantly switch between pots or mixing paints, which just makes the whole thing faster for me, which is why I absolutely love it. The gray is dry and looking great, except for that little bit on the back of the claw that I missed. Don't worry, we'll be taking care of that later. But for now, let's go ahead and move on to some detail work, because there's a lot of details on this guy that we need to pop out. And we're gonna start with a little bit of black Templar. This is going to go on any of the wires that have a sort of rubber coating over them, just to keep them a little bit darker. I'm also going to put it on a couple of the metal bits on, say, the antenna and everything for his radio, just to make it stand out a little bit differently, so it's not all just one same color tone. Then once that's done, we're going to go ahead and move on to some Blood Angels Red. We're coming back to it one more time because we need to put it on a couple of his weapons, as well as one of the cords attaching to his power claw. I just thought it would be a nice pop of extra color that wouldn't seem too out there for like being on him. And it works super well. I absolutely love putting red on my weapons. It always just makes them really cool looking to me. But we're gonna do actually a little bit more to them here in a bit. We'll get to that in a second. However, first, we need to go in and rapid fire through a couple of small colors that aren't going in too many places, but are very, very important. Starting with Ork Flesh, which I'm gonna be putting on the actual screen that is on his radio to show the radar and everything. I wanted something bright and bold and very different from the greens that I'd already used, and Ork Flesh honestly works really well for this. Then we're going to go ahead and move on to a bit of a Iyanden yellow, which I'm going to be putting on the remaining of the cords that aren't unpainted, or that are unpainted rather, and then also his glorious nose ring, because that needs a little bit of bling there. And then finally, we're going to pull out some skeleton horde to put onto his teeth, much like we did the squig. And this time I don't go too dark, so I don't really have to go back and do any edge highlighting. I'm really happy with the way that it's turned out. However, as I was looking at him and I was finishing him up, before I move on to the wash, I decided I wanted to go back and pull out one more time Militarum green and Ultramarines blue to help emphasize some of the decals on his weapon. I figured these symbols would be nice to pop out. I did that a little bit on my orc terrain as well by using my Snakebite colors in there, and it works perfectly. It also stands out really, really nicely against the red that I put down, so I'm very pleased with the results. Let's go ahead and get him washed now. My Commando and the Squig are basically finished. The last thing that I need to do is apply a Arggos Earthshade wash to both of them. Now for the Squig, I went ahead and just did this all over the entire thing, not really worrying about the flesh tone or anything. With the Commando, at first, I went ahead and avoided his flesh because that's what I've done in the past. However, I decided to be brave and try putting Arggos Earthshade over top his flesh tone to see if I could get it to settle into the recesses and give him a little bit of a grungier look. And it works perfectly. I don't know why I haven't done this before. I think it was just that, honestly, I was worried that the flesh tone was going to lose some of its vibrancy and saturation, but it doesn't. Shades don't really work that way. They don't actually tint things that heavily. So I'm gonna be doing this going forward on all of my orcs, and honestly, I'll probably go back and reapply this wash to the ones that I didn't do it to, just to help unify them. Once the wash is on there, however, the last thing that I need to do is get this boy attached to his base, along with the Squig also to his, and then maybe do a little bit of tufting just to hide the seam lines. And I am using the Gamer's Grass pre-made bases like I have been, as well as some of their just standalone grasses to sort of fill in some of the extra, just variety on them. And after that, we just need to rim the base using a little bit of black paint, and we can look at the final models.
Another ambush! What are you up to, Angela?
Well, as you can see, I am touching up the Squig. I've got him attached to his base. I've glued him down using just, normal Zap-A-Gap. And I've gone ahead and retouched up the section that he's standing on, that's part of his miniature, to darken it a little bit and help it blend into the ground a bit more. And now what I'm doing
is I'm actually adding in a few more of these little short tufts that I've got from Gamer's Grass because it kind of blends with what he's already got going on here, and it's going to help me hide the seam on the actual model itself, which is going to help just make it look a little bit nicer, make it look a little bit more natural with the base itself. And I've done this actually on the Commando as well. I've got him and I've already attached him and everything and added in some extra tufts, but as you can see, I sort of just used this long piece of grass to basically blend it in. And that's actually one of the reasons I love these wild grasses from Gamer's Grass so much. They have a bunch of unique shapes. Sometimes they have really long strips. Sometimes they have like weird rounded patterns and everything. And these rounded edges make it so that when you're actually laying in and blending in your models to the bases, it actually provides a little bit more of a seamless transition. And I super love it. It's one of the reasons I keep going back to them over, say, something like Army Painter, which only really has those like round tufts, which work fine for some things, but like the shapes are really selling me on this product. I just absolutely love it. And I'm super, super pleased with how these guys are turning out. So let me go ahead and finish this up, and then we're gonna look at the final models. Ork, 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 Bomb Squig. They are done, and I love them. They're honestly really, really cool. I absolutely adore how they look on their bases. I continue to be super pleased with the Gamer Grass ready-made bases, and the colors turned out exactly how I wanted them. The Commando is still a little bit muted. He's a little sneaky still feeling, but he definitely goes with the rest of the army. And they are looking so good together. I can't wait for Mozgrog to actually release in October because I will be painting him up next month. The Patreon voted on him. I still want to do it. I was actually really disappointed that I couldn't this month, but the Commando and Bomb Squig were a great alternative. I had a blast painting them, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching me paint them up and hopefully get some inspiration from it. Now, if you did, make sure to tell me about it in the comments. Make sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, if you want to see more content like this. We'll have another hobby video later this week for you on Friday, and then we'll have something, of course, on Sunday, either news or possibly a video game video. I haven't decided quite yet, but we'll see how that's going. Now, I've been Angela, you've been watching Hobby Night, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Man, I love Ork knobs. I love how big they are. I love that the new Ork knobs are even bigger and really fun to play with.